Nama Pramana Mulaya Avaye Shastrayonaye Navritaya Nivritaya Nigamaya Namo
No one else? All right. Namaha. Obeisances. Pramana of authoritative evidence. Mulaya to the basis. Kavaye to the author. Shastra of the revealed scripture. Yonaye to the source. Pravitaya which encourages sense gratification. Nivritaya which encourages renunciation. Nigamaya to him who is the origin of both kinds of scriptures. Namaha, Namaha. Repeated obeisances. Translation, we offer our obeisances again and again to you for the basis of all authoritative evidence, for the author and ultimate source of the revealed scriptures, and who have manifested yourself in those Vedic literatures, encouraging sense gratification as well as in those encouraging renunciation of the material world. You can repeat. We offer our obeisances again and again. To you, who are the basis of all authoritative evidence. Who are the author and ultimate source of the revealed scriptures, and who have manifested yourself in those Vedic literatures, encouraging sense gratification, as well as in those encouraging renunciation of the material world. So, purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. If we did not have the powers of perception and cognition, evidence could not be transmitted, and if we had no tendency to believe in particular modes of evidence, persuasion could not take place. All of these processes, perception, cognition, persuasion, and transmission, take place through the various potencies of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord Krishna is himself the greatest scholar and intellectual being. He manifests the transcendental scriptures within the hearts of great devotees like Brahma and Narada, and in addition, he incarnates as Vyasa, Veda Vyasa, the compiler of all Vedic knowledge. In multifarious ways, the Lord generates a variety of religious scriptures which gradually bring the conditioned souls through the various phases of re-entry into the kingdom of God. So we'll read the commentaries by the Acharyas very quickly. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, we pay my respects to the root-proof Srimad Bhagavatam, the Tamil scriptural proof Mula Pramana, and to Veda Vyasa's its composer Kavaye. The meaning is in the form of Vyasa himself. We pay respects to you who revealed Yoni, the scriptures, Shastra, Shastra Yonitvat, Vedanta Sutra shows this usage. We pay my respects under the scriptures propounding Artha, Dharma, Kama, and Moksha, Pravriti and Nivriti, and unto you the root Nigama of both. And Jiva Goswami says, you are the cause and shelter of proofs, the Vedas, the essence of scriptures concerning Bhagavan. You are self-manifesting knowledge. Kavaye, you are proved through scriptures. Shastra Yonaye, it is said, Shastra Yoni thought, the knowledge of the Lord is produced from scripture. That's from the Brahma Sutra 113. You are the scriptures promoting enjoyment and renunciation, and you are Nigama, the source of both of these. Therefore, we offer our respects. And finally, Sanatana Goswami says, You are the cause or shelter of proofs, the Vedas, the essence of scriptures concerning Bhagavan. You are the author of scripture our self-manifesting knowledge, Kavya. You are the shelter of its meaning, Shastra Yonaye. You are the scriptures promoting enjoyment and renunciation, and you are Nigama scriptures, which are your order or indicating proper conduct. Because you have these astonishing forms, we offer respects. And then again, going back to the Sanskrit of the verse. Nama pramana mulaya kavaye ashastra yonige pavittaya nivrittaya nigamaya namo namaha. Om Ganat Timirandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Vinikam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. So there's many different topics here, and perhaps to me the most important is something called epistemology, which is connected with pramana, what is evidence. But first we'll talk about why the Lord presents the Nivritti Marg and Pravritti Marg, which is mentioned here in this particular Sanskrit, Pravittaya, Nivrittaya. Pravittaya means the path, Marg of course means path, the path of enjoyment. And sometimes before joining the movement in the 1960s, devotees would even, not before they became devotees, sorry, they would even read the Kama Sutras. That means the sutras. Sutra means like a very short, pithy statement based upon lust. Just like someone right now is associating with a young girl. He said to me the other day, he says, yes, this is Madhurya Ras. Anyway, it's funny. So anyway, so Pravritti Marg includes things like that, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma means being dharmic, being lusty in a dharmic way, actually. Means following the rules and regulations, not doing vikarma, but karma. Sometimes the devotees use the term of karmi, referring to everybody who is not in the Krishna conscious movement. Not exactly true. Many people are vikarmis. Karmis are those who follow the injunctions of the Vedic literatures. That's dharma. Then artha means economic development, because without economic development, how can you enjoy? Without money, like Prabhupada said one time, several times, very funny way, money is the honey. Because with money, you can basically get so much, like you see so many rich men, they marry girls that are much younger than them, even though the men look like hell and the women look like, models or whatever. So that's artha. And then after that, you got good old kama. Kama means enjoyment. Not only enjoyment of the sex life, which is generally what you talk about with kama, lust, but enjoyment of anything in this world, the senses with their sense objects, or even the subtle senses with their sense objects. So like many years ago, we had some devotee, even I'm subject to it sometimes, just like the desire to enjoy acquiring knowledge for knowledge's sake. I get into it sometimes. It's just like, wow, it's so interesting. This is so interesting. This is so interesting. But how is it connected to Krishna? In other words, we have to connect it to Krishna. Otherwise, it's kama. And then finally, when you get frustrated with all these things, you just moksha. Let me get out of this world. It's raining too much. Coronavirus. Nobody loves me. Like that. All they want is my money. Like someone who's very rich. Everyone's looking at him to get money. In fact, there was one rich man in the United States is becoming so rich, predicted by 2025, 2026, he's going to be the first trillionaire. And people are like hating him already because he's going to become the first trillionaire. So anyway, moksha. So these are the purusharthas, the four purusharthas. And so, of course, we understand there's the fifth Purushartha, which is Krishna consciousness, prema. So anyway, so why do the scriptures prescribe uh, different ways that people can acquire wealth, that people can enjoy their senses, that people can be religious, and people can get moksha from the material world? The reason is because people have different desires. The scriptures are basically trying to get people to the point of admitting there's God. Because in all these different scriptural injunctions, we're talking about the Vedic injunctions, at least there's Om, Krishna. Om is actually a manifestation of Krishna. So in other words, at least they're admitting there's a superior power. Even if they're doing, let's say, sacrifices to Indra, which are primarily in the Rig Veda, they're basically admitting there's a higher power. There's a higher power. And so it's a step, sometimes people just have to go step by step. Oh, nam janmanamante yadavamam prapajate vasudeva savamiti samahatma sadrilava, after many, many births and deaths. So this is generally the process. So that's the pravriti marg. And then the nivriti marg. So there's a purpose. In other words, that's why Krishna has it. Because not everybody's going to be interested in just like shave your head and join the Hare Krishna movement. We've been having this discussion with Adi Purush recently. Like, what is the focus of our preaching? Are we just trying to, just like engage people so they get a little bit Gyata Sukriti? Or are we trying to make full-on devotees of the Lord who are just going to be dedicated to the mission? What are we trying to do? And of course, my answer to him is basically, yeah, we have to be focused. My focus is trying to make full-on devotees of the Lord, and then automatically people will get some association in the process of when we're reaching out to people. But if we actually spread ourselves too thin, like Prabhupada talked one time about boiling the milk, when devotees were just like bringing people in just because, they had warm bodies. There was one bhakta handbook that says, every time you get someone to stay overnight in a temple, you get a certain amount of bhakta points. You remember that?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was Dhanavir Maharaj who had this bhakta handbook. You get bhakta point, just like the Sankirtan newsletter, how many points you get for this type of book, how many points you get for that type of book. And for a set of Bhagavatams, you get a special amount of points. So you get amount of points for actually getting someone to spend the night at the temple, and said if you have to do it, take out the spark plug wires from their car, so that way you'll get the points and the person will spend the night at the temple. I don't think we need to spread the net out that much. My feeling is that we actually concentrate on those who can actually become like soldiers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At this point in our movement, I think it's necessary. Then automatically everybody else gets some association. That's my understanding. And anyway, we spread things out too thin, we don't accomplish anything. So we boiling the milk is really important. Of course, those who are in the temple, they should be interested in boiling the milk, which means very, very strict in the sadhana, like described by the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan there. Sadhana was like lines on the stone. So anyway, so here you have the pravriti marg and the nivriti marg, pravritaya, nivritaya, which I can see without my glasses pretty well, but basically I should use them. So how do we know what is the goal of the Vedic literatures? What's the whole purpose of all this pravriti, nivriti stuff? And of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, it describes Vedaishasa Devahami Veda. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. So how do you know Krishna? By reading all the Vedas, because it's also stated in the Brahmasmita Vedeshu Durlavam Atma Bhakta. It's very difficult to understand what is Krishna simply by reading the Vedas. And also, you have other statements, what about the Mahabharata? Tarko Pratishta, Shutina, Vibhina. This is interesting. Vibhina means Shruti Vivina means the Vedas are so multi-branched, dealing with all these things like Pravriti Marg and Nivriti Marg, and all the different injunctions for different circumstances. I mean, there's an amazing amount of injunctions, rituals, and everything like that. It's hard to understand. I mean, even sometimes in our Krishna conscious movement, we got all these different like procedures and rituals. You know, what's the purpose of it? And if one, of course, I've mentioned many times before, that's Nimagraha. If one accepts so many rituals and actually forgets the purpose, then it deviates one's from Krishna consciousness. I often give the example, when I do arti, I don't count how many circles around how many circles, because that would actually keep me from remembering I'm offering to Krishna. Whereas other people can do it. Other people may have the brain that they can accommodate or think of both things at the same time, multitask. For me, either I do mathematics or Krishna consciousness. I don't have a choice with my brain, you know, whatever. So anyway, Vedeshu Durlabha Adurlabha Bhakta. So how does one understand what is the purpose of the Vedic literatures? Well, actually, Tattva Pranikvateni Pariprashnena Sevya is very easy. Krishna also mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita. One has to approach an acharya, approach a guru, to understand the purpose and how to apply the purposes. So even, here's an interesting point, because here we're talking about pramana in this verse, the word pramana, evidence. So even in approaching the Vedic literatures and spiritual master, one has to understand the principles of pramana, that is what constitutes evidence. And I'm going to go through a little technical stuff here. In the Vedic culture, there's actually 6 types of evidence that are considered. Prabhupada only talked about 3, because the Vaishnavas only talk about 3 types of evidence, and Jiva Goswami only talks about 3 types. So here's the 6 types that are mentioned. Don't get confused. I will explain them. First type of evidence is pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means what? Direct experience. And of course, as we know, if we've read the Upanishad, we are conditioned souls, and guess what? We have imperfect senses, and we have a tendency to cheat, right? And illusion, like that. So, so this pratyaksha is definitely imperfect way of understanding things. And the second one given in the Vedic, this is Vedic, not some of these Prabhupada talks about too. Second one is called Anuman, or inference. Inference means, Prabhupada, I was listening to a class, Prabhupada was talking about this morning, that how do we know everyone dies? You know, we've seen, my father died, practically everybody I've met has died, fine. And I come to the conclusion that therefore everyone dies, but that's not a perfect method of coming to the conclusion, because there may be someone who doesn't die. And I would have to see every single person, every single part of the creation to come to that conclusion, which would be impossible. That would be God. And that's actually the fallacy of many atheists too, that some of the atheists, they say, no one has seen God. So that just means they haven't seen God, or maybe they haven't met anyone who has seen God. But for them to make that statement of no one has seen God and actually be absolutely sure of it, they would have to be God. In other words, they'd have to be omniscient, right? If they're not omniscient, how can they make that? You know, how can we say that that statement is a perfect statement? So Anuman, that's called inference, coming to conclusions. Scientists do this. In the scientific presentation I did about life comes from life, I presented this as the general part of the general scientific method. That they make some inferences, like based upon, but the inferences are based upon assumptions. Actually, I was also listening to Prabhupada talking about this too, about the different laws of nature. Let's say, you know, on the earth, there's certain things that we have observed in the laws of nature. So we assume that those same laws pertain to other parts of the universe. We don't know. We just naturally assume. So that's assumption. And then the next type of Vedic evidence is called analogy. And we use it not as evidence, but we use it to actually illustrate a point. An example is what? The sunshine, right? The sun globe, and the sun deity, right? Those are three types. Those are three things. So that's analogy. Doesn't prove anything. Doesn't prove anything. Actually, Krishna uses it to a certain extent in the Gita too. Yeah, when Dehinos Minyata Dehe Komaram Yoanam Jara, Tata Dehanturas Praptir Tachanamuyati, that you see people changing their bodies in this lifetime. So therefore, then they must change the bodies at the time of death. Well, Krishna makes this an absolute statement. Of course, that's descending process from Krishna. But it's also, he's using an analogy there. So that's another method of proof. Prabhupada really doesn't speak about that because it's not really a method of proof. It's simply a method of helping us understand things. Then there's a derivation from circumstances, which is actually a type of inference. And that's called arthapati. And then the next one is non-perception or negative cognitive proof. In other words, I have not seen God. It's also can be connected to Anuman too. So that's why Prabhupada only dealt with three. That's called Labdi. And the one that Prabhupada and Jiva Goswami and practically every intelligent person has accepted is Shabda. That's the last one, the last type of evidence. But it's interesting. I just did a little bit of study on this. Charvaka Muni, who's our famous materialist, who said, what? Beg, borrow, steal, get yourself some ghee. He's like an Epicurean, an Indian Epicurean. Food comes from Epicurus. He said perception only, prachaksha is the only method of receiving knowledge. That's interesting. Even the scientists wouldn't say that. The scientists would say, Anuman, perception and Anuman are actually methods. And also, actually, talking about perception, the scientists talk about two types of perception, and actually the Vedas talk about two types of perception. One is the gross perception and the subtle perception. I'm not going to get into that. And the Buddhists only accept perception and inference as inference means Anuman, as a method. That's like scientific. That's why you see many Buddhists, many scientists, they're actually interested in Buddhism because it's very much connected to the same epistemology of Buddhism. And the Jains accept perception, inference, and Shabda. And the Mimamsa people and Advaita accept all six. But as I showed before, that all these six can be whittled down to three, which Prabhupada and Jiva Goswami talk about, which is Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. You understand? And really, there's only three, if we understand it. So, and of course, Shabda is the perfect method of understanding knowledge. And there's another description too, which I found quite interesting about receiving information. When you receive information, there's pratyaksha information. Pratyaksha is sensory information. This is not pramana specifically, this is just the information you receive. That's called paroksha information, which is indirect information describing aparoksha, which is theoretical information, and hoxaja, which is direct realized knowledge. So aparoksha is theoretical knowledge, spiritual knowledge. And finally, there's a prakrita, which is perfect spiritual knowledge, which one realizes, or not only realizes, but understands one's nature and has spiritual realization. Anyway, so this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. And then, boy, I'm trying to fill class up with a lot of things today, but going a little quickly. So in this light, in understanding even Shabda, one has to understand something called hermeneutics. And by the mercy of the Shastric Advisory Committee, headed up by Mother Irmela, we're going to describe hermeneutics very quickly, 10 minutes or less. Vaishnava hermeneutics. So hermeneutics means, for us, it means how to understand Guru Shastra Sadhu. Because these are that's the Shabda, Pramana, or the evidence. And so there's three ways or three types of discussions that one can have about Guru Shastra Sadhu. Only one is actually the type we should have. Vada means that both parties sit down and they talk with each other peacefully without engaging in ad hominem attacks and try to come to a conclusion. There's Jalpa, in which both parties are just arguing with each other because they're just trying to prove their points and they're not interested in the truth. And then Vitanga, in which one is just abusing the other person, just trying to torture the other person with argumentation. And you see that, that's quite often. So, we have a handy dandy bookmark, which this was actually designed by Irma, which is actually very nice. And then there's the process. Once we engage in the proper process, which is in the vada of discussion, with the idea of understanding the truth, being ready, not being attached to your particular concept of understanding or interpretation, then you get to the point of seeing if you're qualified to engage in this. In other words, in Krishna consciousness, one must have good sadhana. I'll come to a conclusion, don't worry. One must have good sadhana to be engaged in discussion on hermeneutics. If one doesn't have good sadhana, then one will not have the realization. So that's the first point. And then the second point is to understand the principles of hermeneutics. After principles comes tools. And here's some of the principles of Vaishnava hermeneutics. There's a lot of them. They have 24 listed here. And I'm not going to go through all 24, but just understanding the Siddhanta, basically. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and accepting like Dashamula, or a statement of Siddhanta. And also accepting that Shabda is the higher source of Pramana, understanding different hierarchies in different texts that we talked about. There's Pravriti Marg and Nivriti Marg, what is of a higher priority. Accepting that all the scriptures are consistent. I mean, these are principles that one must accept before engaging in Vaishnava hermeneutics. Having some realization, understanding the highest truth is for everyone's benefit. I'm just skipping through. Understanding parampara, having accepted a guru, education in Shastra. I mean, these are all different principles, bedrock principles that enable one to engage in this study of hermeneutics, or the analysis that hermeneutics does. And then once all right, we get two things so far. One is you have to have good sadhana, you have to understand the principles of hermeneutics. You can't just say, that it makes sense to me. It has to be based on these principles. And then you have tools after that. I'm sure Mother Irma will be proud of me for doing this too. So then you have tools, hermeneutical tools. Like here's some of the tools. One, how does it point towards Krishna, which is the goal? You examine a particular statement. There may be a controversial statement. Does it point towards Krishna? Does it not point towards Krishna? Understanding it with that tool. Understanding whether it should be a direct meaning or an indirect meaning. Srila Jiva Goswami gives that point when in his Tattva Sandarbha, that sometimes we may say, go to the house on the river or house on the lake. Now, obviously, you take the indirect meaning. You know, sometimes, I'm going to give you an example in the Shastra itself. Let's say you have Chitraketu, who has 10 million wives, right? So, how do you analyze that statement? I mean, there can be a discussion on that. Is it hyperbole? Because sometimes, you know, you have to examine it also in the light of common sense. 10 million wives. Where's the population of North Carolina?
That's the population of North Carolina.
Okay, it's population of North Carolina. I mean, you got to be really enthusiastic to do something like that. So I'm not taking a position on it right now. I'm just saying you've got to examine through, you know, logic and common sense. That's a tool. And sometimes the Vedic description will be an analogy, you know, metaphor. And sometimes it will be hyperbole, which means, you know, it's so, like you say, this dome is so tall, like touches the clouds. That's hyperbole. It's just showing it's tall. You know, he's as tall as a mountain. So you really need to see the direct and indirect meanings. And it even says some statements in Shastra are intentionally delusive or obscure. You know, because it's protecting a higher truth, perhaps. You know, and identifying the genre, which means is something a philosophical point or is it very poetic? Because many parts of Shastra are poetic rather than directly philosophical. Of course, they won't deal. And then also examining in terms of the 10 topics of Bhagavatam, understanding what's called nested narratives. Nested narratives means someone is speaking to someone else, relating a conversation that someone else would be speaking to someone else, and that someone else who was speaking to someone else is relating a conversation that someone else is speaking. You understand? It's called a nested narrative. Which text has a higher level of authority? Madhvacharya actually gave a hierarchy of Shastras, and he didn't consider the Mahabharata to be very high on the hierarchy. He actually said the Mahabharata has actually been contaminated throughout the years, you know, from different, so. And we accept the Bhagavatam is the highest, according to Jiva Goswami, and according to the purpose we just read too. The Bhagavatam is considered the highest authority. And we also give different levels of authority to certain commentators based upon whether they're part of our sampradaya or not. I mean, it's just like, for example, oh my God.
If you're talking about a project, you think about
I was glorifying you. So, oh my God, my teacher has come. Hope you can grade me properly. So,
to do the first test of the course here and you go look at it?
Yeah, it would be nice. And then, you know, reference Siddhanta. I mean, there's so many tools here. Even, I'm sure there's more than, I know there's more than this. Here, there's like 40 tools listed. Understanding one's own cultural and individual perspectives is another tool. Wow. You know, because because I've been brought up in a certain culture, I look at things in a certain way. You know, that like, you know, this whole thing about, you know, equality between men and women. You know, I look at things in a certain way because of the culture I've been brought up in. You know, so I have to understand my biases so that I can analyze Shastra. You know, otherwise my biases are coloring my understanding of Shastra. And one has to engage in repeated study in personal. And another tool is to choose the most merciful meaning. Wow, that's pretty wonderful, isn't it? Because, hey, Krishna Karana Sindhu, Dinabandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopikakanta, Radhakanta, Namostate. I mean, Krishna is like the most merciful. Radharani's merciful. So the whole point of Shastra is to bring people to Krishna. It's mercy. It's compassion. So you have to see through that lens also. Am I right? Thank you. You give me an A for this class. Oh my God, I'm scared. So, and also consider because we're connected with Prabhupada, how Prabhupada applied his statements in his mission. In other words, how that's connected to time, place, and circumstance when Prabhupada was enacting his mission. Anyway, these are some of the things, and I'm sure Mother Emma will be happy to send devotees copies of these things, or even do a course on these things. This was a presentation that she and her associates did to for the GBC, and hopefully they can do a longer presentation, because it's actually one of the most important subject matters. Like, how do you know what you know, basically? Or what do you believe in? And, you know, devotees have all sorts of discussions about things like what Prabhupada said, how to apply it, etc. I think for the good of our movement, it's probably the most important thing we can establish. Okay, thank you very much. I will try to put the DVDs online if you give me your mercy. So, let's see, 1 minute. Radha Golokananda ki jai. Nam Hari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Purusham Tam Bhajami Hari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kanvanga Maravindalaya Taksham Bharavatam Samasitam Buddhasundaram Kandar Ago Vidamaniyam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Goya Kora More Toma Pina Ke Jagat Samsar Pateta Pavana Etu Abhavatara Moksamalpalate Taprama Napaime Prabhu Nityananda Rimananda Soke Ripabalagan Chaitanya Nitya Sana Kana Ruparaguna Mattajugalache Jima Acharya Prabhu Srinivas Ramachandra Sangama Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Moya Korama Pray Umma Bela Ke Jayana Jagat Samsarani Paramahansa Paravatikacharya also Teta Satishi Shiman His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Goti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudha Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopakapata Sayam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Sagadata Swami Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaura Premananda Hari Hari. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we'll read the translation. My dear Lord, please be merciful to me, because who can be more merciful than your Lordship within these three worlds? Your incarnation is just to reclaim the conditioned fallen souls, but I assure you that you will not find a more fallen soul than me. Therefore, my claim is first. My dear Lord Nityananda, you are always joyful in spiritual bliss. Since you always appear very happy, I have come to you because I am most unhappy. If you kindly put your glance over me, I may also become happy. My dear Advaita Prabhu, husband of Sita, you are so kind, please be kind to me. If you're kind to me, naturally Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda will also be kind to me. I pray for the mercy of Sarup Damodar, the 6 Goswamis, namely Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatana Goswami, Shri Bhatta Raghunath Goswami, Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, and Lokanath Prabhu. I, Narottama Das, pray to the merciful Srinivasa Acharya, and I always desire the company of Ramachandra. Narottama Das Thakur Ki Jai. So we'll see if there's any questions online from anybody. Change this. And then I have to allow people to ask questions. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Nalini Khan?
Hare
Nobody?
Krishna Gurudev, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna and Nalini Khan. I thought you would never ask a question. Anyway. So what's the question?
Gurudev, you were discussing about the focus of the preaching. So when we talk about Sunday feast or festivals, so is there aim to give Sukruti to everybody, and that's why we invite?
Yeah, Sunday feast is actually, make sure everyone's, yeah. Sunday feast, it's actually a little bit different as far as our focus. But we also should always be preaching pure devotional service. Like you see, Srila Prabhupada, we have to be careful at Sunday feast, not simply trying to appease the crowd so the people give big donations to the temple. Srila Prabhupada would always preach actually the highest principle even at the Sunday feast without agitating people. I mean, obviously at the Sunday feast we don't tell people you have to give up your families or something like that. You know, we preach according to the way Prabhupada did, but Prabhupada would always preach the highest principle. I think we should concentrate on that. Yeah, I think if we just try to water things down, then we end up with something that's not even Krishna conscious after a point. Okay?
Okay, Gurudev, thank you.
All right. I think we have to end now. So thank you all for joining us. And this will be available on